Hello and welcome back to Arsenal Domination for the second time today. This video is going to preview the very important last 16 Champions League tie first leg against PSV Eindhoven. And both sides will come into this on the back of very poor form. Arsenal, as we know, won against Leicester just about. And since then have lost to West Ham and drawn against Nottingham Forest as they try and find solutions to their front line, which is significantly injury hit. PSV haven't won domestically since the 5th of February, but they did come through the round of 32 tie in the Champions League against Juventus, probably unexpectedly, arguably. But they lost their last two to the wonderfully named GA Eagles. And they've lost ground in the title run, just like Arsenal have. So there's going to be a lot on the line here, probably more so for Arsenal. I think PSV probably didn't expect to necessarily get this far. Arsenal, I think their minimum expectations will be to get to the quarterfinals, where they will face, as we know, one of either Atletico or Real Madrid. So it's going to be a very important game for them. But let's have a look at PSV. We expect them to sort of set up 4-2-3-1. That's how they set up in the last few games. And they will, as I say, come into the back of this on poor form. I suspect they will be heavily reliant on De Jong's physical presence up front. He will look to hold the ball up and bring in the wingers Bergwijn and Bakayoko, and try and sort of get onto the balls into the box. I think that's where their main threat will come from. Gabriel, I would expect to be the man predominantly looking after him, and making sure that De Jong doesn't get too much of an aerial dominance on Arsenal. But William Saliba also capable in the air, and of course has the speed and pace to sort of support Gabriel. I think that's, as I say, where the main threat will come from there. From an Arsenal perspective, we know we're good at the back. We are one of the best defensive sides in Europe, but we are going to have to try and find a goal threat. And I think that's what's going to make the battle quite interesting. I've spoken a lot about Arsenal, how we just need to get through this period. It's not going to be pretty, it's going to be attritional. And I think that still applies today. I think if you look at the Champions League results from last season when we played each other, we were uncomfortably at the Emirates and drew somewhat fortuitously 1-1 away with a much changed Arsenal side that day. And I think that away tie is more reminiscent, more my expectations of this tie right now, given the fact Arsenal have significant injuries, which will force sort of changes from what our preferred 11 would be, and obviously the fact it is away. Arsenal will then have some key decisions to make ahead of this tie. I think probably the personnel decisions sort of fall into three areas. I expect Thomas Partey to come back in for Jorginho, but I think there's some legitimate choices in three positions really for Arsenal. I think the first two are the right back and left back. The left back will be Miles Lewis-Skelly or Calafiori. Lewis-Skelly, of course, missed the game against Nottingham Forest through suspension. Calafiori played 45 minutes and looked defensively suspect at times, but I think partly as a result of getting so high forward, meaning he had larger spaces to defend. I think that is something that Arsenal do genuinely have a weakness at in terms of the way they set up. That's the space to exploit, regardless of who the left back is. But of course, offered a heck of a lot going forward. He had probably, Arsenal's best chance, or one of the best chances of the game against Leicester when he came on. But he is a real attacking threat going forward. And he got much closer to Moreno against Forest, and made Arsenal's attack look a little bit better than it had against West Ham. But MLS has been fantastic this season, so I think that's one sort of area where Arteta had a big decision to make. The other, as I say, is the right back area, where Ben White, is he fit enough to start? I think if he is, that becomes a real choice. I think Ewan Timber has done very, very well, but we know that Ben White's chemistry with Martin Odegaard, who has struggled, I still think some of that is injury related. I think some of that is just missing those creative runs that he can exploit so well with his passing, that he's not kind of getting right now, which sort of brings the best out of him from other players, with the lack of Saka and Martinelli and Havertz sort of bouncing off him. But White, we know, is one that will get forward on the overlap quite a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what Arteta does there. I don't think there are any bad choices out of those ones, but the for him to make. But we will see where he goes. And then the other one is a number 9. You know, if Arsenal set up 4-3-3, do you go Moreno again? I think given PSV, one of their weaknesses is their ability to deal with the ball into the box in the air and the physical sort of challenges. That could really help Arsenal in terms of set pieces, but also Mikel Moreno's peeling runs to the far post. If we play Moreno, I think it's going to be really important that we do get a lot of crosses in to that box. That will bring the best out of him rather than sort of trying to play it in short. And that may be something Arsenal look at. I think the alternative area is either Trossard or Sterling. I think if we're playing 4-3-3, I prefer Trossard on the left, which probably means Raheem Sterling is your other option there as a centre forward. Maybe that sort of unlocks him. I've talked about that before. I mean, I'm not expecting great shapes, but we're going to need to get something out of him in this sort of little period. But I think they're the 3 decisions, as I say, for Arsenal to make. But I think there's also a choice about formation. You know, we sort of expect the 4-3-3. It's how Arsenal play. But with the personnel, it's not really quite working at the moment. And, you know, there is a question whether he goes to a back 3 here with wing backs. I think probably if he does and Ben White's fit, he's a logical choice in at right back. At left back, I think there is an argument for either Calafiori or Miles Lewis-Skelly, and I think that will just come down to a choice of Arteta as to which one he prefers in the role, because both can do that, I think, probably quite effectively. But you could bring Calafiori in as your left centre half, and then it's Tierney or MLS at the left back rather than Kivior in at left centre half. So I think probably both of them play there. And I think that would look like a back sort of 5, if you will, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, MLS in that scenario. It would probably mean Odegaard and Rice with Wanyeri and Odegaard just ahead of them, and then you've got a choice at number 9 between Moreno, Trossard or Sterling. Probably brings Trossard into contention at number 9 there in that scenario. I think that's probably what it looks like. But I think Arsenal really do need to consider this. I think the lack of options are a genuine concern for Arsenal. It makes it very, very difficult for Mikel Arteta to find solutions. I've spoken a lot and sort of compared it to Klopp's Liverpool team a few years ago or Pep's Manchester City team this year. But there's also a comparison to Tottenham, and one of the criticism I would have as an outsider looking at Spurs this season is Ange's inflexibility with his selection and lineup and the sort of style of play. And I think that's why Arteta needs to look at something here. It's not working with the way we're currently set up. So what can you do differently? And this might be it. And, you know, if he doesn't change it up either in game, if it's not going well, or to the start of the game, I think he opens himself up to criticism. I think part of the problem right now with the unease and unrest in the fan base is if he does make a change and it all goes wrong, does he get criticised for that? But I think he doesn't need to ignore the noise and make the decision he thinks is best for Arsenal to win this game. But as I say, I think the crucial thing is if it's not working, can he make that change in game? And I think if he does sort of try and do something differently and make those changes to try and make something work, then I think it's much harder to criticise him if he just goes with the same old, and it doesn't work. And one of those things will be moving the ball quicker. I think he will start, though, with a 4-3-3. I think it will be Rail, White, Saliba, Gabriel, MLS, Partey, Rice, Odegaard, Wanyeri, Trossard and Moreno. I think that's probably the side he will go for. But, it'll be interesting, as I say. My final thought just before I leave you really is I don't think this is a must-win for Arsenal, but I think it's a must-not-lose. This is a two-legged tie. I think it's really important that Arsenal don't give themselves a mountain to climb back at the Emirates. And this side should be good enough to be an average PSV side. Let's be clear about that. But if you go there, you get a draw, and you bring it back to as a win at the Emirates, I think that's enough to get through. And ultimately, getting through is what really matters. That's what Arsenal need to look to do. If you go there and lose by 2-0, something like that, I think you can see what pressure that makes on Arsenal. We saw it in the Newcastle game. I know the second leg was away, not at home, but when you're chasing the game, you leave yourselves exposed and at risk of conceding, and then it's game over. So I think this is really important. Arsenal keep themselves in a tie, and that's why I think it will be a very dull, attritional game. I think this will end 1-1. That's my gut feeling. And that wouldn't be the end of the world for Arsenal because you're keeping yourself in a tie. But obviously you want to win, and in normal times you expect Arsenal to go there and win, but this isn't quite a normal time. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on what side you will play and what you think the score prediction will be, and I will be back tomorrow evening after the game to reflect on that, and I will hopefully have a video out tomorrow, which might not be universally popular, but hey, we will see. But I'll see if I get time to put that together later this evening. Anyway, thanks all for watching. I hope you enjoy the game as much as you can tomorrow, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks. Bye.